Welcome again to today's edition of Seekers of Meaning, the podcast arm of Jewish Sacred Aging. I'm your host, Rabbi Richard Address, Jewish Sacred Aging's director. And as you know, these podcasts are designed to shed some light on the longevity revolution and its impact upon our community and our families. Thank you again for joining us. You can contact us at rabbiaddress@jewishsacredaging.com and go visit the website, we hope, at jewishsacredaging.com and the Jewish Sacred Aging Facebook page. One of the more interesting things that we've talked about on a whole variety of times here on the Seekers of Meaning are family experiences. And we are very, very honored to welcome friend and colleague, Rabbi Jack Romberg, to today's edition of Seekers of Meaning to walk us through his experience of his family as focused on this very, very fascinating and very, very enjoyable brand new book called A Doorway to Heroism, subtitled A Decorated German Jewish Soldier Who Became an American Hero. That's quite a mouthful. So, Jack, welcome to Seekers of Meaning. Thank you very much for joining us. And thank you very much for A Doorway to Heroism. It's nice to see you. I hope you're well. You and your family are well. It's good to see you. We go back a lot for field disclosure. We go back a few years back. A few years. Anyway, welcome. Jack, who was Richard Stern? Tell me about Richard Stern.
Well, first of all, thank you, Richie, for having me back here today. And as I had told you, great memories of knowing you. So Richard Stern was my great uncle. He was my dad's uncle. He was my dad's mother's brother. He ended up becoming the legal guardian for my father in about 1925, 1926, because when my dad was about 2.5 years old, his parents were divorced. So he never really knew his biological father. In fact, Uncle Richard was basically his father, the person who raised him. So that's who he was. And of course, as a little boy, I knew very little about his actual history. I just looked at him as my great uncle, and in fact as my grandpa, because he loved being with myself and my brothers as much as he could be, to do things with us, to be our grandpa.
And so that's lovely, but why is he the subject of a book?
He's the subject of the book because of what I learned about him as I started to get a little older. By the time I was, about 8 years old, that's when I learned that he had been a hero in the American Army in World War II. And the reason why Dad told me about that is because we were actually doing a ride for a father-son vacation going up to Canada. And Dad was telling me stories about himself in World War II because, see, I loved watching the TV show Combat and, hearing things about World War II. So Dad was telling me stories about him being in the war. And then he said, I really need to tell you about Uncle Richard. And then he told me about how Uncle Richard had been an actual hero and won the Silver Star, and how he had saved his whole company of soldiers that had been surrounded by German machine gunners at the top of Mount Pusha in Italy. And so once I knew that, I became fascinated in other ways with Uncle Richard. Now, he would not tell me anything about his history in Germany in terms of what he suffered during the 1930s and so forth. He just, in fact, when I went to him that first time that I learned about the medal, the Silver Star, and I ran into his house and I said, Uncle Richard, can I see the Silver Star? He had it hidden in a desk at the back of his house in the room that I used to sleep in when I would visit him. And he pulled it out and he goes, Jackie, if you want it when you're older, you can have it. And I have it, by the way.
Oh, wow. But the real hit or hook to this story is not your Uncle Richard's heroism, perhaps in World War II, but going back, you discovered him in World War One. So
Correct.
what's that link? Where was he in World War One in Germany?
Okay. I started to learn that when I hit close to my bar mitzvah age, because I actually saw the picture of him that I have shared, and that's on the front of the book, in
Right.
which he's standing in the doorway of his store protesting against the Nazi boycott of Jewish businesses on April 1st of 1933. And what he's wearing is the Iron Cross that he had won in World War One. He was drafted by the German army in June of 1917 at a point in which Germany was actually losing the war. So his then going in and not just being in the army, but pushing himself to do everything possible to help the German army on the front line. He became a machine gunner, and so he was on the front line a lot. And so what he did is he tried to show his patriotism to Germany in the war, even though he knew, like almost everybody knew, that the war was not going well for Germany. And I happen to have his service booklet from World War One, and I have the list of all of the battles he was in World War One, and all of the big battles were in 1918, and some of the really awful ones were in July of 1918, and that's when he won his Iron Cross, which was awarded to him then on August 22nd of 1918. So that's how he got it, and that was his history in World War One.
So you have this story now in A Doorway to Heroism, and obviously the title with the picture on the cover, a military hero in World War One fighting for Germany against
Correct.
the Allies.
Correct.
Fast forward to World War Two, he escapes Germany, goes into the American army, winds up being a hero of the American army fighting Germany. And in the meantime, he's living, I think, in Cologne, if I'm not
Correct.
mistaken.
Correct.
And one of the things, you have this very, very interesting paragraph, I think it's on page 52 of the book, where you talk about post World War One, your Uncle Richard living this wonderful life. This wonderful life in Germany. You say during the bulk of the 20s, Uncle Richard lived a life that had combined his German patriotism, political support for the Weimar Republic, dedication to the Jewish people, the love of raising his nephew, and having fun with family and friends and girlfriends. He's living this lovely life, and one of the things that people, when they read this, I would imagine they're going to say, Rabbi Romberg, it sounds very familiar to a lot of what people were living here in the United States. And look what happened. Can that happen here? And I have to ask you that. You've done this research. You followed your uncle. You walked this walk with him from his life as a hero in the German army to American army, immigration. Could this happen here, Jack, with everything that's going on now? Are we living this fantasy life that everything is secure?
Well, I don't know if we are living such a great life right now with everything so secure because of what we're experiencing here. And in fact, what we've been experiencing over the last number of years, I don't know how much you want me to get into politics here in America, but there is real hatred between people on both sides of politics, far worse than it was way back in the 1980s or 1970s when I really started to follow politics and started to watch things. The hatred is bad. What was great for Uncle Richard in Cologne is he was among a lot of people who supported the Weimar Republic. And he was very active in the Social Democratic Party, which was a major, slightly liberal party that was supporting the Weimar Republic. And in fact, the person who a person from the Social Democratic Party was the interim chancellor at the end of World War I and helped establish the Weimar Republic. And what Uncle Richard was experiencing was, of course, being out of the army, no more war, able to work in family business. First, he actually worked, of course, for his uncle's business. And then his dad wanted him to take over the ownership of his own business because his dad was getting sick. And so Uncle Richard took over the business and was given the ownership of the business at a relatively young age. I mean, he was only 25, 26 when his dad turned it over to him. But at the same time was when his sister's divorce happened, and that he then had his sister and her son, that would be my dad, take a place in his own home above the store. But he was having a really fun time. At that point in the 1920s, especially the latter half of the 1920s, he really, really was able to enjoy dating and enjoy taking my dad as a little boy on all kinds of walks and explorations of things in the city. Of course, one of the things he did with dad that dad, as a little kid, thought was very boring is he would put dad on his shoulder and take him to political meetings of the Social Democratic Party, and dad would keep wondering, why is my Uncle Richard taking me to this? But of course, in the long run, dad appreciated the fact that Uncle Richard taught him something about politics, and especially about politics that were appropriate for a democratic Republican country. That's, of course, what we're worried about right now. Are we going to stay a democratic Republican country, or are we going to become something else? And honestly, in looking at history, the history of Germany, and now looking at what we've been going through here, I sometimes wonder, where are we heading as a country? And are we going to, I don't know that we're going to go to exactly what happened with the Nazis, but boy, it makes me think about it. It really makes me think about it.
And I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to ask you about that, because I think this book can be used for colleagues in a congregational setting or even in a confirmation class setting to say, here's one person's journey, but against the backdrop of social, political upheaval and change. And, how do you see yourself in that? And I think it could lead to some very interesting conversation amongst people now, not only who are our age, but to whom World War II is really just ancient history, which is, I think, I would assume one of the reasons why you wrote the book, because it does have historical significance for multi-generations. What was it you were doing? Very interesting. You have pictures in the book. What was it? What were your feelings when sometimes you came across all these pictures of your family from Germany and some of the war pictures and even World War I and the immigration? What stirred up in you? What was stirring up in your soul when you did this journey of discovery?
Well, it was deeply meaningful to see some of these pictures, although what really I learned was who a number of these people were, because I had seen the album that Dad had put together years ago, even as a teenager, that had, for example, the picture of Heinrich Stern, who was Uncle Richard's older brother. Well, I had no idea who that was until I actually did the research, especially when I did the research in Germany in September of 2019. And there they showed me the picture of Heinrich Stern, and they gave me a picture of Heinrich Stern, and I was able to compare it to the pictures that I saw of him in the album that Dad had that I have now. And I ended up learning so many names of family members, and that was just wonderful to see who the family was. I mean, this is all my family that I never really knew much about, and I've learned. Now, of course, with Heinrich Stern, the very sad part is that he and his wife and his daughter were killed in Auschwitz. Were captured by the Nazis and taken to Auschwitz. So that was one piece, of course. Now, in terms of other pictures, there were some pictures that I've had hanging in a frame in my office for a long time, like the picture, of course, in the front of the book, a picture of Uncle Richard in World War I, a picture of him as a sergeant in World War II, along with the Silver Star and along with the certificate of his getting the the medal from the Germans in World War I. So I've had all of that, but then I saw additional pictures, extra pictures of, for example, another picture of Uncle Richard when he won the Iron Cross. I have a picture of Uncle Richard's brother Heinrich in the army. I have pictures of his dates, some of his dates, which was fun to see because I didn't know him as somebody who dated many people. I just knew him, who he was when I was a little kid. And it was fun to see him, as a little kid. It was fun to find the picture of him dressed up as the Hanukkah man. Those things were, I hadn't seen that in I don't know how long. So seeing all of these things, some were very emotional and some were just fun. Fun to see. Now, can I actually add something to what we were saying a little while ago, which was about the relevance of the book? One of the things that has really, really struck me in doing the research and putting this together is seeing the parallels between German Jewish history from their emancipation in Prussia in 1812 onward through the Holocaust, and seeing the parallel of their experience to the parallel of African American experience right here in America from their emancipation from slavery in the Civil War until even right now. And I was just so blown back by how many things I could see that were parallel activities and
Wow.
way they're treated. And then I ended up reading Isabel Wilkerson's book,
The
Caste.
Cast. Yeah,
Yes,
great book.
and when I read that, which I only read that about 5 months ago, I was blown away. Like, wow, she saw the parallel between German Jewish history and African American history.
Well, I think the point that you raised. You probably have either another book in that, or um, some conversations with the Black church community, really doing some of this conversation with them, and it's something that I would urge you to do because I think it's very important, especially in this day and age when we're so
It's something that
siloed.
it's
I think
something
you
that
could
I
do that.
actually did in 2018 and 2019, just in the year before I retired from Temple Israel in Tallahassee, just after the shooting of Jews in Pittsburgh in October
Right.
of
And the Tree of Life.
2018.
Right.
Yes, I was then contacted by an African American minister who I'd known for years, and he ran a big church in Tallahassee that Martin Luther King had spoken in, that was rather famous for some of the things it had done. And in fact, he had me as a guest speaker there, and I shared a lot of the parallels between Jews and African Americans at that speaking engagement, at that sermon. And in fact, one of the things I pointed out is how we look at the Nazi flag and they look at the Confederate flag.
Right. Right.
That's an example of how we react to things. But there's a lot more than that.
Well, I think that I think this book speaks to the next stage. I can't tell you what to do, but obviously there's an opening there that's very, very timely and I think very, very needed. Talk to me, Jack, and we're speaking with Rabbi Jack Romberg, the author of this brand new book, "A Doorway to Heroism," subtitled "A Decorated German Jewish Soldier Who Became an American Hero." about your Uncle Richard Stern. Talk to me about this leaflet. You write about this leaflet that Richard put together just at the beginning. It seems like the beginning of the Troubles. Talk to me about that.
Well, he had been active in, of course, working with, veterans of the Army. And when he learned about the upcoming of the boycotting of Jewish businesses, which was learned by a lot of Jews throughout Germany in March of 1933. A lot of Jews learned that this boycott was about to happen. And Uncle Richard felt, especially because he had a number of non-Jewish friends who were co-veterans as well, and he, had a great relationship with them. So he felt that he needed to put something together that condemned the Nazis in terms of them coming against people who served in the German army, showing their patriotism and helping Germany in fighting in World War I. So that's why he put the pamphlet together. And of course, key pieces in the pamphlet are him stating how his brother served the entire war on the front line, how he was drafted and he served on the front line and he got an Iron Cross. And he included, of course, the number of Jews who were killed in World War I, which was 12,000 Jews that were killed in World War I. So that was all a key, those were all key parts of what he wanted people to read about. And he felt that if he stood up for this, it would, one, not only be standing up for the Jewish people in Germany, but he also felt that he was doing the right thing for civil rights for the Weimar Republic, because he did not want the Weimar Republic to be torn down and for people's civil rights to be taken away. So he felt that as a veteran, this was the right way to approach.
Yeah, and I point this out because, again, when you take a step back after reading a book, there's a certain amount of, I don't know what the right word, pathos, because you're reading it here in the 21st century, you know what's happening, you know what's going to happen in the story, and yet you admire the courage, what it must have taken for your uncle to write and publicize this leaflet, knowing what was going on and what was going to happen. And then you have these very, very lovely, like this one scene where his farewell in 1939, I think it is, his farewell when he leaves Cologne, the journey eventually to the United States. And then you write about your trip, I think in 1973 to Israel, which sparked, I guess, some memories and some other doors that opened up on this story. How important was that trip in the discovery of this book?
Well, the trip to Israel in 1973 was with my dad, and
Right.
of course, he, as I write, let people know in the book, I was with Dad when he actually found one of his best friends from back in Germany, and that just blew me away. But I didn't think about it too much through part of my early, adulthood. But as I was putting the book together, I realized that the experiences of the family, including Dad and his experience, such as this, of having a dear friend who was not just Jewish, but a Polish Jew whose family was living in Germany for a long time, and that they were kicked out of Germany, and that's what led to Kristallnacht, Crystal Night, and so he had not seen him from late October of 1938 until he found him in Israel in 1973. I just thought that was a very important piece and a very important example of the
Right.
importance of Germany in certain ways and what many people experienced.
Before we run out of time, Jack, let me ask you this last question, because you have this visceral, intimate relationship with your uncle. what would your Uncle Richard say now to you about what you've done, the life you've lived in the United States, the research that you've done, um, explaining his story? What do you think he would say to you if you were able to sit down and at the deli and have a cup of coffee and a bagel or a bialy
Well,
with your
he
uncle?
he was not somebody who was looking to push his popularity or something like that. So he would ask me why I felt I had to write this, and I would have to tell him more than just about himself. But then he would say to me something like, "Well, I knew I had to give you the silver star," or something like that. And then he would thank me. And just as he said to me when he was dying, and I was with him in the hospital when he was dying, he said to me, "I know you look at me as a hero, and I don't want to disappoint you." And
Oh,
I think that would be the biggest piece that he would say to me is, "I hope I didn't disappoint you," or "I'm very glad that I didn't disappoint you."
that's a lovely thing to say, and it's a lovely way to conclude this. Thank you very, very much, Rabbi Jack Romberg, the author of a brand new book, A Doorway to Heroism. I'm assuming, Jack, available at anywhere you would get books, and of course on the great God Amazon. Um, Best of luck with as you start to talk about this book to congregations, etc. And I'm sure if one of our colleagues wants to have you talk about this, come to their synagogue, obviously with the pandemic, maybe virtually on Zoom. Real fast, how would they get in touch with you?
They can just email me at wjromberg@gmail.com, or they can call me at my phone number. And if they email me, I can get them my phone number.
Okay, wjromberg@gmail.com. Jack, thank you very much. Continued success and good luck with this book. It's really a pleasure to see you again. And just take care. Say hello to everybody and stay safe. Take care, babe. Thanks
Thanks
a
so
lot.
much, Richard. Good to see you too. Bye-bye.
Likewise. To all of you, thank you again for joining us on today's edition of Seekers of Meaning, the TV show and podcast arm of Jewish Sacred Aging. I'm your host, Rabbi Richard Address. If you would like to make a tax-free donation to help support our work, please go to the website, jewishsacredaging.com, and scroll down and hit the conveniently located donate button. Seekers of Meaning is produced at the Broadcast Center of Lubetkin Media Corporation here in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And a big shout out to our producer, Steve Lubetkin. Again, thank you for joining us. I am your host, Rabbi Richard Address, and we look forward to greeting you on the next edition of the Seekers of Meaning TV show and podcast from Jewish Sacred Aging. In the meantime, stay safe, everybody. Stay well. Take care of yourself. Shalom.